A very good evening to everybody. I'd like to start by introducing the speakers that I have with me. First and foremost, the moderator, Deepshika Kumar. Deepshika is an alumni of ISB Hyderabad and the Wharton School of Business. She has had over 15 plus years of experience in business consulting across Ernst & Young and JD Power. She's also the author of 101 Lessons to be a Damn Good Speaker on building excellence in speech. She is also the co-founder of Speak and Learn with Experts. And now it is my utmost privilege to introduce Mr. Nicholas, the Managing Director of Michael Page India. He started his career with Michael Page Belgium over 10 years ago, after which he moved to India in 2013 to head the firm's Gurgaon office. In October 2014, he took the responsibility of the firm's Mumbai office before obviously receiving the promotion to his current position. Today, he is the managing director of the India operations of Michael Page with 3 offices and close to 160 consultants under him. I welcome you both, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for being here with us today. So, Nicholas, most welcome from the entire team here. Why don't we get started with your views and the presentation first?
Okay. Yeah. So I'll quickly start. I only take 5 minutes to give you a little bit of a view on the recruitment industry, because and how technology actually is influencing the way recruitment is done in the entire industry. Yeah? So I'll share my screen for that. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, let me just maximize screen. So if you look at the typical recruitment process, it'll go from what I call a job intake, where you, on one hand, will try to understand what the role is about as a recruiter, or that can be an in-house recruiter or an external recruiter. Yeah, there's not so much differentiation into that. It's then about moving to sourcing, screening, interviewing, and eventually offering the candidate and hopefully onboarding the candidate. Now, if you look at the overall way it is done, it's always an interaction between human and machine. Yeah. So where human would be typically the most used skills in the past, especially before machines and mainly computers were there, and where we now see a more long-term shift towards machines taking over in some shape or form, and I'll explain a little bit later more in detail how it works. But I'll maybe give a little bit of an anecdote how it went in the 80s, because it'll show you how things already have progressed. So if you would see how recruitment was done in the 80s, it was in effect a way that you would take up your phone and you would still dial like this, the phone, call a client, try to understand from a client what exactly he is looking for. And then from there, you would, instead of looking in a database, you will have a list of job types. Yeah. And then in that job types, you would have names, and that would be a written list. And then you will go from there to your classification method in these drawers and start looking for CVs in the files. Yeah. So that was the way it was done in the 80s. Now, the funny thing is these CVs needed to get as fast as possible to the client. And there was no email. Yeah. So you could mail it, but that would take 1-2 days, and you might lose out on time. So what there was a guy on a bicycle or on a motorbike, and he would take the CVs and bring them to the client and ensure that the client gets the CVs and so on and so forth. So if you see how we have evolved from there, there's a huge difference already. Yeah? Email has come in. We have now job boards which came in. There are different ways in interacting with clients. You can do it now over a video call, same with candidates and so on. So machine has become an enabler for us to do our roles as recruiters in a much better way. And until now, this enabling, it has been more as an enabling function. The question is, when will it start replacing some of the tasks which a recruiter is currently doing, which probably will take a lot of time. Yeah. So the end objective probably is that this whole process will be done by a machine. Now, will this be in 50 years, 100 years, 150 years? I'm not an expert in this, but eventually there's a big chance all of this will be done by a machine, because if the machine is able to do these human tasks, which everyone is predicting will ever at one point in time is happening, this will disappear. Yeah. So, but probably there's a chance that we don't see it in our lifetime. So there's three things which interact with each other. And what you see in the market, you can look for an end-to-end solution in recruitment across these 4 or 5 buckets. But most of the time, the solutions which are there in technology are very feature-oriented. Yeah, so they will solve one particular problem, but they will not be something that you can actually replicate across your whole process, across different processes in an organization. So an example be giving, you can have that you have video interviewing where a candidate gets a couple of questions asked up the front, and then the candidate just through an application will answer these, and then the video comes into the inbox of a client, which then in 10, 15 seconds immediately can assess whether this candidate would be a fit and whether he wants to invest more time on the candidate or not. Now you do that with a senior candidate, it will never work. Yeah, so it is a specific feature that will work in a specific context in most cases, and it's very difficult to have a wholly integrated system. Yeah, you will see a difference in where technology will work better than in transactional processes versus knowledge-based processes. Again, taking the simple example, if you work with more senior candidates in the market, it is much more knowledge-based, much more relationship-based, so it's much more difficult to drive technology through that. And last thing is, which I mentioned already, is it actually going to replace or enable us to be more successful? And especially in the higher end of the market, more enabling will be there. Replacing could start creeping in on the lower end of the market at a certain point in time. In terms of the seniority of the roles. Yeah, so I quickly broke it down a little bit for yourself, what you can see across the different segments. So if you look at the job intake and the actual sourcing, so looking for candidates, you'll see that the selection often is still very human based, and the sourcing of senior level profiles is very human based. But if you see on the junior level, it's the opposite. Yeah, what you'll see is a client of us, or sometimes some providers, they will put an ad on, they'll get a lot of CVs coming in, and then they just have some filtering mechanisms in place which automatically get you to the right candidate. Yeah, so depending on the level, you'll see differentiation in the way it approaches. But all these platforms today are enabling us to be better. If you look at the LinkedIn today, or databases we're using, job ad platforms, and so on. Screening, where I see a lot of opportunity is to actually make this much more data driven and much more technology driven is definitely here. Again, on a senior level, more difficult; junior level, easier. But at least as an enabler, I think much more will come in the next couple of years, because assessing a candidate with objective measures and things in place is probably a much better way of having a successful hire towards gut feeling and people with just interviewing skills. Yeah, so this, I think, is something which we definitely will see more things coming in. Interviewing, yeah, so we have, like I said before, pre-record video for which actually eliminates the individual that needs to take the phone, ask a couple of questions, then say yes or no, will easily be taken over, and you can actually skip a step. And lastly, I think this is the most difficult one, the employment offer, because it's not only at the end that you make an offer, you actually already start to understand what the offer could be the moment you talk with the hiring manager, and then through the process, through your selection, through the conversations you have with candidates, you actually see whether that will fit the client's requirements. And all that negotiation piece is actually interwoven everywhere. So very difficult today to give this to a machine, because they will not read into the specificities of each candidate, where they live, what is their family situation, what kind of increment would they want, and so on. So there, I think it will take a long time for some standardization or machine will coming in. Yeah, so globally, this is a bit what the recruitment industry is moving towards, and for the viewers, maybe what is important to know is the more you use these specific platforms, the better the chances for you to be able to put yourself out there towards recruiters, because it is going to move towards that, yeah. And it's not only going to be in the recruitment industry, and we're going to talk about it later. It's going to be in each of the industries we're currently which are currently there out there, yeah. So this is a little bit from my end. I'm not sure whether you have some further follow-up questions on this, Deepshika. You're on mute.
Absolutely, yes, Nicholas. I think from a technical perspective, as we said, you talked about LinkedIn and from the other Monster, Jobs Ahead, Naukri, etc., etc. I think that the entire access part, the access problem is being solved, but the need analysis part is where none of this have been able to be successful. What is your take? I've spoken to so many leaders from the recruitment and the search, the executive search side as well. What is your assessment of what still makes recruitment firms, search firms so validated? So first of all, define the recruitment landscape for us, especially in the subcontinent context.
Okay, so look, if you look at the recruitment landscape today, you can divide three major areas in the market. Yeah, you have the CXO level, which I would call it, which caters typically to 80 lakh upwards type of positions. Okay. Then you have a broad range within the mid to senior level, which typically would be going from a 25 lakh, 30 lakh to that 80 lakh. And then you have the level below, yeah, which is typically more a volume game and a little bit more generalist in nature. So each of these segments would have different players catering to it, yeah, and each of these segments have their own difficulties and their own recruitment firms which cater to it with their own solutions. You can see obviously recruiting for a junior person is completely different from a CXO level. So if your question, coming back to your question, what does it take to have a good hire? That will differ a lot from the level you are looking at. Now, within the current context, I think a team that will come back a lot is technology, yeah, and that will come back at the senior level, as on the mid-level, as on the junior level. Because any organization that wants to make itself relevant today will need to, in some shape or form, pivot towards a more digitized environment, whether that is just to support their employees or whether that is to support their clients or connect their clients, whatever reason, they will need to do so. And I'm seeing already in the market the roles into digital transformation are roles which are now currently popping up in very traditional companies. Yeah, companies who were probably not thinking of it, and now suddenly, through this COVID period, suddenly start thinking, oh, we're gonna miss the boat if we don't change, and someone else will come and take our piece of the pie. So, and if people in the company are not moving towards that, yeah, whether it's the leadership or the middle management or the lower management, they're gonna be a little bit redundant in my view. So it's of course a long-term game. Yeah, it's not going to change tomorrow, but it will be required for everyone at any part in their career to think, how do I build this skill set into my current set of skills?
So you talked, Nicholas, about now talking slightly more about the trends of and I also want to when we ask the questions, I also want to keep a small piece. And talk specifically about your own leadership journey, particularly for the past 7 years that you've spent in India. And yeah. I'll ask that as a leading question. But before that, Nicholas, what are you seeing in terms of the current trend? I know you talked about that. We're past the lowest, which happened in May. What is it that you're seeing right now? And somebody is saying that the Q3 is going to be even worse because companies had money. Now they're running out of it, and now it's going to fall further down. What is your prediction, the crystal ball prediction for?
I wish I had that ball. I'm still looking for it. So, but for now, as a company, we've been pretty good at actually foreseeing what's going to happen, both globally as in India. I think I can say that most of our forecasts have been spot on, and we're looking typically 3 to 6 months ahead of the game. So I was predicting actually by September we would be around an activity of around 75% within recruitment. Now, recruitment is a leading indicator because if companies start recruiting, that means they're confident about the future. We're currently at the 65. Now, the 65, the mix is completely different from the 100% we had 9 or 12 months back. A lot has shifted to technology. Yeah, so that's where a bulk of the roles come, and that's where companies are confident that they want to invest in. Yeah, so if there is already a path towards digitization that was happening, that is now getting accelerated. If they didn't have a path to digitization, they start thinking of it, though that will take sometimes a little bit more time to get implemented. So we see a lot of these mix going towards technology, data analytics, product, and so on and so forth. The second part, which has been accelerated in the Indian market and also globally, is everything which is around healthcare, and that in the broad sense of things. Now, there are short-term issues in hospitals and medical devices and so on, but the long-term view of the industry is that it's going to be a large uptick, and especially in a country like India, where there's at least a lot of, I would say, underinvestment in the industry as a whole. And with the development of more medical devices and diagnostics and so on, I think this will create a good growth area for people who want to build out their career in that area. So these are the two teams we really see coming back. A last theme which we see is continuing. There's still an investment appetite in India, especially from private equity funds. So they are constantly on the look for good opportunities, majorly because of the overall valuations being much more sane than they were before. So they use this as an opportunity to see whether they can make some deals across. Yeah, there's a lot of money available in the world. It's just that the confidence is very low at this point in time.
Excellent. So, Nicolas, tell me one more thing. It's interesting that you talked about the CEO side, the CXO recruitment side. So, while everything now, as you said, that the mix has shifted to digital analytics, big data, consumer internet, and more. But what would your suggestion be to CXO level people who are now looking for a job, are now outplaced because of circumstances or for whatever reasons? What would be your suggestion to these CXO level people? Yeah. What do they do? What transition do they do in terms of skilling? Because, also the age profiling, they'll be typically around 40 plus or 35 plus bracket, which becomes very difficult also, somewhat difficult to reorient themselves. What do they do?
Yeah, if you're in a market today and you're at that level, and your skill sets are not aligned where the growth in the market is, it's going to be pretty tough. Yeah, so I see two options. You speak about reskilling. It is not that easy, because for me, reskilling is a combination of getting an external perspective, yeah, and that can be through course, training, or whatsoever. But it is also about on-the-ground implementation of that perspective, yeah, and that's how you're going to build a skill. It's not just I'm going to train and not execute. You need to do both ends, and that's where then through results you get the confidence that the person at the other end of the table to say, okay, this person I believe they can do this. So I think it's not as easy if you're without a job to really go out there and say, oh, I suddenly have acquired a new skill set. I do think though there are opportunities in the market, maybe on a more flexible way, in a consulting way, where you can actually step into companies and add value in a short term, because you have, as a CXO, certain experiences, and sometimes a company would already have a digital focus, but they need maybe a little bit more of the on-ground experience, the reality, the brick and mortar experience. And in these situations, you could actually go in, be a consultant, give a different perspective, but meanwhile also be able to understand the digital side of things, and that will add a flavor to your profile. A lot of people are very worried about taking up consulting assignments because it is looked upon in a negative way, but this is where the world is moving. It's going to be more flexible, more agile, and through these things you can actually keep yourself relevant. So that's, I think, could be something they could be looking at.
Fantastic. So actually, I would really want you to make note of this particular piece that Nicholas talked about. It can help a lot of people in the current circumstances.
Definitely.
So, Nicholas, if I were to come back now and to the question that intrigues me when I look at leaders like yourselves, tell us about your journey, your India journey. Belgium to Gurgaon and then to Mumbai. How has leadership been for you in the past 7 years?
Yeah. So it's already, for me, India is the only thing I still remember in my career. So but I can say that it has been the best experience for myself to challenge myself on different things. Of course, when you start in a new country, it's about the culture and so on. But I don't think I took too long to adjust. I think India is still pretty Western in a lot of ways in the type of environment I'm operating in, the way people think and the ambition they have. I was very pleased to see very ambitious people when I arrived. Yeah, so they just needed some guidance here and there, and it was just working with their energy in the right direction. So that has been quite rewarding. I do think with a lot of exciting and ambitious people, there's a lot of, and this was my first learning, a lot of expectations, and I think we're working in India with high skilled, high talented crowd, but with a lot of demands in terms of their own career growth, their salaries, whatever they require, and managing that, balancing is pretty tough, because I'm not used to come into such an environment. Because in Belgium, you say, okay, this is what I need to do, this is what I earn, and I'm doing it. And here I constantly get the question, but what's in it for me? What's in it for me? So I needed to balance this out and try to understand how to work through and make sure that it doesn't come a balance where I'm just answering the questions of my people, but also make sure that they're delivering before they actually getting rewarded. So that was one learning. I think from a leadership perspective, the best learning has been in the last 3 years, and I would say COVID itself has been tremendous in the way I've been able to at least put in practice a lot of things you read. And before this talk, we were talking about, I like reading about management and so on. And I come back to the earlier question. It's not only about reading, how do you put things in practice? And COVID has been an excellent example of where you can actually put things in practice in terms of how you change your strategy, how you drive short-term or balance short-term goals, which is about preserving the company, versus long-term goals. We still want to be the biggest in the market and certain revenue size and so on and so forth. And finding a way to get everyone, because we're running around a 180 people company, everyone aligned with that, with all the difficulties going on, with asking people to take a salary cut and so on. It was amazing to see that we were able to do this, and we came out so positively, and I'm quite convinced once this is over, a lot of people will say, oh, this is one of the best learning experiences in my life, and it really defined how I'm going forward now. At least it is already for me. So I think some people are still thinking, I hope it's over quickly. That's the difference. I'm a little bit myself as well, but yeah. So
yeah, I understand. But that's beautifully put, Nicholas. Let me ask you one leading question. I know, and not so much in terms of being politically correct, but in terms of, we understand that there are, while it's a beautifully young country and aspirational, as you said, that, a lot of aspiration, ambition, but there are very, very clear gaps in the orientation, productivity, efficiency. I worked in the Southeast Asian market. I used to work in Singapore, and when I came back, I really found it very difficult for the first couple of years to adjust to the way some of us worked here. So, but having said that, businesses per se, the overall economic system is moving very, very fast, and then there is our curriculum moves only as fast. Even with the new education policy coming in, you would see probably 2 generations apart that the differences would actually start manifesting. But so there is a leadership void that is there, particularly in the middle level. What
True.
is your view of it, and how can companies who are at the receiving end of such void help and elevate their entire productivity matrices when they hire people from within the country?
Yeah, so it's very true. And what you see, and sometimes the frustration of us, but if everyone in the country, when you go to any company, they're always chasing the same 4 or 5% in the market. Yeah, and probably I'm even exaggerating, but I'm only talking mid senior level. I'm not even going to the lower levels. So everyone wants the same profiles. Yeah, and these profiles get jacked up in terms of salary in the market, and then there's a whole void of people who get lesser opportunities because maybe their education was not up to the mark for most companies. Maybe at a certain point in time, their communication skills were not strong enough. For whatever reason, there's a lot of people who actually have not gotten the chance. And it is a fact that if you don't get the chance to do something, you will not acquire the skill. And you start just losing time. And that's where the issue is. It's giving people similar opportunities to grow. And companies need to think beyond the standards which are there, which is very difficult. It is not happening today. So somewhere I think companies or the industry need to come together with the education industry and see how do we get all these young people giving chances to prove themselves through the system. That's the biggest problem. As a company today, and I remember in the shared services when I spoke to clients, that was always coming back. Yeah, we have leadership, very good. Then we have a lot of people that we need to hire. So we automatically promote people, but they don't have the skill sets. And then they are not able to manage the people. The people below get frustrated, they leave, and you get that revolving door of because of the middle management not being strong enough. So it is a chicken and egg problem at this point in time.
Absolutely, Nicholas. I think that's a major issue. So, but also in some of my last questions, Nicholas, would be in terms of there is another trend, and you talked about that the CXO level particularly move towards consulting and keep yourself relevant, and I think that would pretty much be applicable to perhaps to across levels as well. With a lot of freelancers now emanating, particularly in digital marketing, even the freshers, you see very, very young graduates or not even graduates coming forward and saying that, let me do those small gig experiences, gain that experience and then move up and then see what I end up liking. So where do you see the role of recruitment firms? So you're for example, you are a leader in recruitment in not just the country, but globally. So
Yeah.
what is the role change for yourself as an organization or as a part of a large industry that you are seeing, which would aid such a transformation for the employable people?
Yeah. So it's our role is to educate the market. Yeah. So the good thing is that there's a lot of instances across the globe where it's already happening. Yeah. So the Indian market, it just needs to be educated. And today, when I have a conversation with a client, it will be the least preferred option because they've never tried it. And let's go to something that works for me. They always say yes, but then the moment you're going to talk contract and you're going to talk details, it becomes so complex that they shy away from it. So there's an education aspect on the client side, but there's an education aspect also on the candidate side where you need to explain them what's the benefit for them, because he can probably earn a little bit more. He will gain a little bit more flexibility. He will also maybe be able to tax-wise optimize a couple of things for himself. And also he will actually be able to do different things because let's face it, I've seen so many CVs, people jumping every 2-3 years because they feel they're not happy in their role and they want something more and more projects. Well, this is the best way to do it. You can actually do it in an organized, structured way where you can actually explain to the market why you changed, because you wanted to increase your skill sets. So these are a couple of things which on the candidate side would help them.
Great, Nicholas. I have a question coming in from a gentleman called Tushar Matthew. Tushar asks, in what industries are you seeing the most layoffs and at what levels, both from Indian and global perspective?
Yeah. So the layoffs will still come. So if you look at GFC, I think the GFC, most of the layoffs happened around 6 to 9 months after everything happened. So we're now going to get in this period. So companies would have gone into crisis mode. They would have looked at what they needed to do. And most of the actions today are around salary, furlough, and so on. Especially with larger companies, the actual layoffs take time because it's big structures. They need to rethink their whole strategy first. From that strategy, they will look at what's the people that fit into this, who are the people who are not fitting into this. So this is now going to come. So you'll see more and more of these news coming into the market. But that means things are getting cleaned up. So the layoffs are not necessarily a bad thing. That means people are moving on. Yeah, of course, if you're individually impacted, it's of course a bad thing. But I think from an overall economy perspective, it is bound to happen, and companies need to reorientate and need to probably right size in certain situations. So that's where I see now. Where you see the biggest or gonna see the biggest impact is in the traditional industries. Yeah, so that's where the most of the impact will be from a layoff perspective, because they will need to rethink their business models. So I think of retail as being the number one in this instance. I don't believe any retail company can stay with the size they currently have, whether it's a number of stores, whether it's number of people, the way they're doing business. So they will probably be one of the biggest impacted. Hospitality, I think a little bit lesser in the long run, but in the short run, because of the issues they will be having, probably. Aviation, again, shorter term, probably in the longer term, it will come back because the long-term trend is of people traveling, is people staying in hotels and so on. But the long-term trend in shopping will be, I'm going to do it online. So always look at the long-term trend, yeah, because the short-term trend is there, but the long-term trend will define whether you need to actually get out and try to do something else in life.
Absolutely. Fantastic way to frame this, Nicholas. Another question comes in. How have the sentiments of Indian professionals shifted with the current market demands and that of global pandemic?
So can you explain a little bit that question? What do you mean with that?
I think that's pretty much what we got. But
if you would give you,
I think it's more in terms of the overall market sentiment that we are talking about. You know, how do you see? And you can answer it from a recruitment perspective as well, from a hiring perspective.
Yeah, I think I've spoken before the call already a little bit. Again, it's the same principle. I'm probably repeating myself. What is the long-term trend? The long-term trend is about more online. It's about more health consciousness, and these two trends will continue, and this will be all driven through a digital lens. So everything in the long run that will support this growth will do well. Everything that goes against will definitely suffer. So there are some short-term hiccups. I told you about medical devices because hospitals were not able to actually do any operations while COVID was happening. Sorry for that. While COVID was happening. But once this is sorted out, this is going to come back and probably much higher, because diagnostics is developing much better than it used to be. And more diagnostics means more understanding of illnesses, more referrals to the hospitals. And that's the whole chain growing. So you have short-term impacted industries and you have long-term impacted industries.
Fantastic. Perfect. Nicholas, any closing remarks? Give us a ray of hope as we look at the future.
I like I said, I think it's in some weird way very, very exciting times. And the thing will be is that once we get out of this, it will give us probably all the skill sets we require to do much better. And in any conversation I had with peers or with people that have gone through GFC and so on, we all know the bounce back is going to be really exciting. We don't know when that bounce back will come, but it probably take a year to really see a differentiation. But when it comes, it will come with a lot of innovation and a lot of different ways of doing business. And within that, for us, it's recruitment opportunities, because companies will need certain skill sets which they don't have today. And that's where the opportunity is. If you have these, you will fare well and you will have opportunities in the market. So make yourself relevant.
Excellent. Perfect. It was such a pleasure talking to you, Nicolas, and thank you.
My pleasure is mine.
I must compliment the depth of understanding and the depth of your responses. Thank you. We are honored that you chose India as a destination to lead this phenomenal organization.
Yeah, I'm very happy that I have chosen India.
So, Avi, thank you very much, Nicolas. Look forward to being in touch, and an honor that you chose speaking to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Bye-bye, Nicolas.